What I'm going to share with you today is going to change the way you think about your business and your career. Stay tuned. Welcome to Coach's Corner, Empowerment for Entrepreneurs. In this episode, which phase are you in? This is episode number 29. Today's episode is sponsored by the Marketing Network, themarketingnetwork.tv, profitable marketing training for business owners who want to get results fast. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Coach's Corner. I'm so happy you can join us today. And, if you're watching this live, that's fantastic. If you are catching it on a replay, that's great. If you're watching it on a podcast, that's great as well. We are now listed everywhere that fine podcasts can be found. We've got an audio version and a video version. If you don't want to have the video, you don't need it. You could just listen to it audio. I think a lot of people prefer that. But if you're like me, you like the video part. I like to put it on my iPad. I like to get a lot of podcasts I listen to or watch, I should say, are video podcasts. They download on the iPad. Then I put the iPad up and it's like it'll run in the corner. I could do other things and check in from time to time to see what's going on in the podcast. Okay, today I want to talk to you about business, your career, and it's a conversation I have a lot with a lot of the professionals that I do business with, a lot of the coaches and doctors, chiropractors, natural health practitioners, those kind of people that I do business with a lot. And we talk often about the different phases of a business. Now, maybe you've heard this before in a different way. I have a different way of looking at it. I really look at it and I say in business there are three phases. And those three phases are really, they really shift the way you look at your business. Now, I'm going to give you some ideas today that will help you sort of get a grasp of what I'm talking about. Because when I do this with my customers, I'll sit down and sit with a client and I'll say, okay, what phase of business are you in? They normally look at me and they go, I have no idea what phase of business I'm in. I don't know. I'm just doing my business, doing my thing all day long. And I say, you're in phase 2. And they go, okay, what's that mean? Well, all the money's in phase 3. You're in phase 2, you're not making all the money you could be making. And they look at me and they go, well, how do I get to phase 3 from where I am? And that becomes what we talk about. That's what we end up working on. So for all of us, we got to be looking at, we're not in phase 1 for the most part. Most of us are in phase 2. But really where you want to get to is you want to get to phase 3. Because that's where all the money is. That's where you're working less, you're profiting more. Isn't that what you want? You want to work less, you want to profit more. And we're going to talk about those three phases today so you understand where I'm coming from in this because I think it's a big eye-opener for a lot of people when you figure out what I'm talking about. Okay, let's look at it right here. Phase 1, very simply put, that's the education phase. Right? We all go through this education phase. We're learning our craft. We're learning whatever we're learning. That's phase 1. Right now, I'm in phase 1 of, studying for my remote pilot's license so I can fly my drone legally and make money with it. So this is phase 1, the education phase. But, I'm not going to make money in phase 1, right? There's no money to be made in the education phase. You know that. You went to school. When you went to school, what kind of money did you make in school, right? Maybe a handful, you made $1 here, $1 there. Maybe you had a part-time job or whatever. There's no money really in phase 1. I can safely assume if I think about who listens to this podcast or watches it or the people that follow me on Facebook, I can safely assume that most of us are no longer in phase 1. There's always a handful of people who come in and they say, yeah, you're in phase 1. That's great. That's really a wonderful place to be. But most of us really are in phase 2. And phase 2 is what I like to call the hustle, right? Phase 2 is the hustle. Now, you might say, what do you mean? What's the hustle? The hustle is, well, we're out there in business. We're doing our thing all day long. In my 20s, I was in the hustle too. And there's my camera from back then. And, the hustle was, for me, I was a photographer. So I went to school to learn how to do commercial photography. And basically my idea was I have camera, I will travel, I'll go anywhere, I'll photograph anything. If you're paying me, I'm there. So I photographed sports events. I photographed weddings. I photographed, company picnics and parties and you name it. If there was money attached to it and, I was able to go and shoot, I would take photographs everywhere. I always had my camera with me. I was hustling. I was hustling and hustling. And I spoke to a fellow the other day, a friend of mine who's really in the hustle too. And now he's in his 50s. And I'm thinking, maybe it's time you get past the hustle here. And maybe what you want to do is you want to get into the next phase. Now, the next phase is where I'm going to spend the time, because the next phase here is the big money phase. This is why you're here. This is what you want to listen to. The big money phase. How do you get to the big money phase, right? It's a great question. And the big money phase really comes when you're done with the hustle. Now, the hustle for some people is their entire career, right? Some people never come out of that. They stay in that the entire time. That's great. If that's what you want to do, that's great. You don't ever have to come out of that. However, it's exchanging your time for dollars. And there's a limit to that. So as much as I charge for consulting, as much as I charge for coaching, as much as I charge for writing sales letters or helping people with their websites, or, what the plethora of things that I do for people, there's a limit to how many hours I have that I can sell. Even if those hours were $10,000 an hour, there's still a theoretical limit to how much money I can make in a given week. So that would still put me in the hustle zone, right? So that's the hustle, exchanging your time, your knowledge, your experience for dollars. You're actually doing work. And that's great. Like I said, I got a lot of doctor friends who retire still in the hustle zone, where they're treating patients. They're working on patients. They're doing what they're doing. And they get to the point where it's time to retire, and they never get into phase three, what I like to call is this big money phase. And that's really what I'm talking about here today with you. And it is, phase three can be better defined as this: selling your knowledge. Now, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? We all know, we've all talked about this, that knowledge is power, right? We all know that when you have knowledge, you can make a lot of money, so on and so forth. But what we do with it in school is we learn all this stuff, and then we say, okay, now we know how to do it. So then we go out and we do what we learned. And we do it for people, and we help them, and we're a contractor, we're a plumber, we're a photographer, we're a chiropractor, you name it, any profession. We learn it, don't make any money there. We do it, we make some amount of money. Some people are happy with the amount of money they make there. But then phase three is, what if you were to take that knowledge, package it, and then be able to sell it again and again and again, and make more money over and over again for what you're doing. Now, I'll give you some idea what that looks like, right? So if I'm looking at my knowledge here, my knowledge is in marketing. I did marketing stuff for many, many, many years. And you might say, okay, what do you do with your knowledge? Well, one thing you can do is write a book. So I wrote a book, and, I put my knowledge into this book. This book sold a lot, right? Had a lot of sales from it. And it also brought a number of speaking engagements. It brought new business, that sort of thing. But it did more than that, because I didn't have to write it again to be able to sell it again. And all of a sudden it was in another language, right? I think this is Portuguese. I think that's what they told me it was. And then it sold again. And it was sold in another language. It's motivational marketing. The cover looks kind of different, doesn't it, each time? But it's okay. Every time they sold it, I got some money. Every time a book sells in another language, I get paid. So what I'm talking about when I talk about big money and selling your knowledge, you want to get to a point where you can bundle all the stuff that you've learned in school, but now have executed and perfected, learned a lot more. You learn a lot more doing than you do in school, right? That tends to be the way it is. So you want to bundle it and get to a point when you're literally out there selling your knowledge. Now, that's what I call phase three. Now, if you can get there, and all of you can, because today I got to tell you something, the publishing industry is not what it was in the past. In the past, you had to do a proposal. You had to submit it to a publisher, maybe a publisher's agent, and you had to wait to get accepted, right? And it would take years, sometimes hundreds of rejections. You hear the stories all the time. Publishing industry is different today, completely different. Today, you can go out there and you can decide, I'm going to write a book. You ask permission from nobody. You publish your book. You can self-publish. Amazon has something called Create Space. Anybody could figure this out. You give them a Word file with your book. They convert it, they edit it, they clean it all up. They give you a book. They give you a printed book in return. And now you can sell it on Amazon. You can sell it on your website. You can sell it at other bookstores, right? And in many respects, it's better today to do that because the commission that you get from each sale is much higher than what the publishers were offering way back when. Now, you want to get there, but I'm talking about books. Books is not the only way you can do this. You could be a trainer. You could do seminars. You could be a coach. You could do webcasts. You could do paid training, paid courses online. Right now, one of the biggest market segments right now, online education. People are learning with video online. Number one reason I'm doing this podcast as a video as well as audio is because people really do enjoy video. So I say, wow, if you really enjoy video, I think I ought to be doing video, right? So that's another way to get it out there. So you got to look at yourself and you got to say, okay, I've got all this knowledge bundled up in me. I've been doing what I'm doing for as long as I've been doing it. How do I take that knowledge now and put it into a form that can be sold again and again and again and again and again with you doing less and less and less effort? So for instance, my book sold, I think, over 5,000 copies. Now you might say 5,000 doesn't sound like a whole lot. That's pretty good for a book, right? And when you look at that, it's like there's 5,000 people that I've reached, I've trained, I've taught, and I didn't do much other than promote it to my mailing list. I got on the radio a handful of times to do interviews. I spoke at a bunch of seminars, stuff that I enjoy doing anyway to quote unquote promote the book. And people bought the book and bought the book and bought the book, and they were trained many more times than I could have done that in person. For me to coach 5,000 people one-on-one, teach the marketing one-on-one, I would be burnt out, completely burnt out. Right? So I didn't want to do that. So what it caused me to do is raise my prices. So the people that I do work with, very selective who I work with, and they pay a much higher price today than they did before I started bundling my knowledge and selling it out there. So books, ebooks, special reports, webcasts, online training, courses, membership sites. I mean, the list just goes on and on, but you've got to look at ways to bundle your knowledge. And let me talk about this guy. This guy I talk about a lot in a lot of the seminars that I do. Dr. John Gray, a lot of you know him. He's the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus fellow. He is like my go-to success story when I talk about this model of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Now, he got into phase 3 relatively quickly compared to most people. He was in family and marriage counselor, and he was doing that for about 10 years. And then he wrote this book. And he was in line. He tells the story that he was in line at the photocopy place, getting a photocopy of the manuscript to send it into the publisher. Back then, everything was typed, right? It wasn't computer where you could just like print out as many copies as you want. You had to actually go get photocopies of it. And he was standing in line, and some woman looked over his shoulder as he tells the story and said, yeah, that's exactly right. So he knew at that point that he had something. He was onto something. So he thought, I'm going to get this book published, and I'm going to do everything I can to promote it. And it was very quickly that he was whisked out of being, a counselor where he was working with people one-on-one. And now he was on tour. He was on a book tour. He was speaking. He was on radio shows. He was on television. He's promoting the book. And the money is exponential when you get into that phase of your career. Now, a lot of people will say, wait a minute, really, I don't get that we're going to be able to do that. But, the truth is when you get into that part of your career, you do very, very, very well. And that's where literally a lot of the money ends up being for a lot of people who think, well, I'm going to be rich and famous. I'm going to go out and do this. Well, yeah, you want to get out and do this? That's where the money is. The money's really going to be for you in phase 3. And that's where you want to look. You want to see where you are right now. And you want to say, okay, I want to get to phase 3 of my career. What do I need to do to get there? Well, take all your knowledge, all the experience, all the stuff that you've learned along the way, and then find ways to bundle it and get it out on the market, because that is going to make all the difference going forward. So that's what I want to have you think about today. I mean, it was a career-changing thing when I figured this out, and I said, wow, when I could break it down like this, it just made all the difference to me. And that was the motivation that caused me to write my book, and a second book, and a third book, and all the rest of it that I've been doing, the webcasting and the live trainings and everything like that, because it was much more profitable to sell the knowledge than it was to be in the trenches doing the work. It just is. That's just the way our economy is set up. So leave you with that. And with that, I want to talk to you a little bit today about our sponsor, themarketingnetwork.tv. Today's episode is brought to you by them. It's your opportunity to gain valuable business insights into how to build a bigger, more successful business from some of today's smartest business leaders. People like Melanie Benson, who's a success coach to industry leaders. Terry Levine, business leader, mentor, trainer, coach, and creator of the entrepreneur movement. And people like Lisa Rothstein. Oh boy, what an amazing woman she is. Former Madison Avenue copywriter and the person behind the jingle, "Wait Till We Get Our Hands on You." It was an advertising campaign back in the 80s. I don't know if you remember it, but she's one of the copywriters on staff that actually wrote that. So Terry Levine, as I mentioned to you earlier, is one of the people in the Marketing Network. She came in and sat with us to talk about her book, Heartrepreneur, and her book is called Turbocharge, How to Transform Your Business as a Heartrepreneur, which is really, really an amazing book. And she shared a lot of insights specific for business owners, how to lead with your heart rather than leading with your wallet, and not in a way that is clunky and weird and that kind of thing, but in a way that really made a lot of sense to business owners. She's one of the people that's in the Marketing Network, and one of the people that you'll get to hear from as a member of the Marketing Network. So here's one of the cool things about the Marketing Network that a lot of people ask about. You can watch it anywhere. Right? So here's one of the things I really love about it. You can watch it on Roku, Apple TV, Chromecast, iPads, iPhones, Android phones, your laptop, your desktop, even gaming consoles now like Xbox. This is brand new. You can watch as much as you'd like, wherever you'd like. It's a little bit like Netflix for business owners. And more content. We're adding more content regularly. And what I invite you to do is go over, have a look at the marketingnetwork.tv, and you can save 25% on your membership when you use the offer code COACH. Go to the marketingnetwork.tv, and you can find out more there. All right. I want to thank them for their sponsorship and support of this show, and thank you for joining us today. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did as well. I hope you're thinking a little bit about what you can do going forward in terms of how do you get yourself into phase 3, because that's where the money is. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you real soon.